Welcome to the latest episode of the Catalyst Health and Wellness Coaching Podcast. My name is Brad Cooper. I'll be your host. And today is an interview with Matt Fitzgerald. If you don't know Matt, you're going to want to get to know Matt when we're done here. He's a very well-known author, and in fact, he's written two of my all-time favorite books. Matt became a runner at the age of 11. He ran the last mile of the 1983 Boston Marathon with his father. How cool is that for a starting point? He never intended to marry his passion for sports, fitness, and writing, but that's how it worked out. He moved to California in 95 for no particular reason, and the next thing he knew, he was writing for the new magazine, Triathlete. Since then, he's been published in Bicycling, Maxim, Men's Fitness, Men's Health, Men's Journal, Outside, Shape, Stuff, and Women's Health. The son of a novelist, Matt has a special passion for writing books, and his best-known titles include Racing Weight, Brain Training for Runners, and Triathlete Magazine's Essential Week-by-Week Training Guide. Matt's also a certified sports nutritionist and has served as a consultant to numerous sports nutrition companies. He also continues to design ready-made training programs for triathletes and runners that are sold through trainingpeaks.com and finalsurge.com, as well as customized plans available through his own website. Matt intends to keep racing until he can't. He lives in Northern California with his wife, Nataki, who is more important to him, I'm glad to hear, than both running and writing. Let's jump in. All right, Matt. Well, I appreciate you joining us today. A whole list of fun questions. First one out of the gate. What drew you to focus on endurance racing, coaching, and writing? And I mentioned some of those elements in terms of history from your bio, but just in general, can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so there was definitely no master plan. I've always been someone who knows what he enjoys doing and insists on doing what he enjoys. And I grew up as a runner, developed a passion for writing when I was also quite young. There was a little bit of chance involved. When I moved to California in 1995 from the Philadelphia area, I wanted a writing job. The first one I got just happened to be with a startup triathlon magazine, and and that I actually wasn't running at the time, but that open door it led to every other door that opened subsequently.
Sure.
I started training and competing again. At first I was just a journalist. I didn't consider myself any kind of expert, but the more immersed I became in endurance sports, I started to develop an expertise. So started coaching, became a certified sports nutritionist. And then, I kind of swung at every pitch, did some consulting, speaking, now it's more than 20 years into the journey, and I'm pretty happy with how things have shaken out.
Wow. That's awesome. I just noticed I've got my personal two favorite books of yours in front of me, and I just noticed that Samuel Marcora did your foreword for How Bad Do You Want It? That leads nicely into our second question, because obviously Dr. Marcora is big on the evidence-based practice elements. What role our wellness coaches are battling that constantly? They're working with clients that are reading the headlines and then come to them with some crazy idea. What role do you see evidence-based practices having in your coaching and your writing, and why put the emphasis there and connecting with guys like Marcora when it's easier just to follow the dramatic headlines?
Yeah, I'm someone who, it starts with my own athletics, my own interest in competing and succeeding. I want to know what works, not what's popular or new or sexy. I don't care what it is, as long as it's legal and safe, and as a coach, I want to be right. I'm not just going to latch onto something because I think I can make a buck or get my name out there. So that's really where it starts. I'm desperately afraid of, being wrong or, failing with an athlete I coach. So, I tend to go, because I still really don't consider myself, an innovator. I'm more of like a conduit from, the real brainiacs out there to, everyday folks. So, I keep an eye on science, but also I pay a lot of attention to what the most successful athletes in the real world do, at the elite level,
Right.
because, their livelihood is at stake. So when you talk about evidence-based, it's not just science, it's also, real world evidence as well.
Nice. Okay, so our audience, as I mentioned, current or future health and wellness coaches, any advice you have for them as you've interacted with these different athletes for the other stuff? So some of their clients will be athletes, some of them will be focused in the fitness arena, but other elements, the sleep, the stress, the life balance, have you come across some of those things as you've worked with these high-level athletes and interviewed some of these folks for your different books that might be helpful for the coaches?
Yeah, with endurance athletes, the thing I love about working with them is that they don't need to be motivated. They just don't. They bring that to the table. So I take advantage of that because they're motivated to train, and they are motivated enough to spend money on the sport and invest time in it, sacrifice in other parts of their lives. But, the motivation to do some of the ancillary stuff that supports their athletic ambitions, like, eat right, that comes from actually a different well of willpower, if you will. So sometimes in my work with them, I like them to have clarity on how everything fits together and everything matters. And obviously, if you are an amateur athlete and your livelihood doesn't depend on it, you have to set a limit in terms of like how much you're going to prioritize the sport.
Sure.
But I like athletes to have clarity on, hey, if you want to be the best runner, the best triathlete you can be, it's not all training. And I think that same paradigm applies to non-athletes who are chasing other sorts of goals as well. They may think that, only two or three things really matter. And the way to get them to buy into some of the stuff they're not as motivated to tackle is to just, get them to really understand, the impact that it does have. I mean, take something like sleep. It's like the first thing to go for so many people, but I mean, you're doomed without it. I mean, you're not going to succeed in marathon training, and you're not really going to think very clearly at work or whatever else, whatever your goals may be.
So you nice lead into the next question. Are there you mentioned sleep, are there certain areas outside of the swim, bike, run, core, maybe even nutrition as our primary areas for endurance athletes? Are there other areas that you're starting to see a lot more kind of the balls getting dropped in those areas as they focus on the other 4 or 5?
Yeah, sleep is number one. And then some of them, I guess, like injury prevention, just sort of like people need to keep it, in mind that health is the foundation of fitness. So, you can't, some athletes, they're inclined to just not eat enough, especially a lot of the female athletes I deal with. They sort of think, well, the skinnier I get, the faster I'm going to run. But, I'll point to, athletes, top female, endurance athletes who have long, successful careers. And, the point I make is like, these people are healthy. Like you might lose 10 pounds the wrong way and have one good race. You're not going to still be, having a lot of success and developing as an athlete 2-3 years from now, unless you just have a solid, consistent foundation of health. So there's all kinds of balls people will drop, with respect to building and maintaining that foundation. One that I'm always beating the drum on with athletes is some of the stuff like, foam rolling and mobility exercises and stuff that like, I get it. They're like, I got to make time for that too. But, you know what I mean? Like, it's like sooner or later, you either get on board with it the easy way or you get hurt and you got to get on board the hard way.
Right. Man, I love that. So health is the foundation of fitness. There's your next book title, man. That's so key. So did you come across that accident? Like, did you just keep seeing over and over and over, either in your own training and racing or in the clients you were working with? has that been something you've always seen as a core piece, or is that something that, boy, over time it just became so obvious? Health is the foundation of fitness.
Yeah, sort of the way I came at it, I guess, intellectually versus experientially is, I was an English major in college, so I don't come from, a biology, chemistry background. So I was sort of, late to the party and had to, bone up on my exercise physiology. But when I did, crack open the textbooks and learn, what I found was, everything you need, like all of the physiological underpinnings of endurance fitness are like they're more of the same of what you need for health. You know what I mean? Like a lean body composition, or a high level of insulin sensitivity in lean muscle tissue. Like you want some of that just to be healthy, and you want more of it. A strong immune system, a good inflammatory control system. All these things, it's total overlap. They help you just feel good and be functional, and avoid disease and live a long life. But they also help you train effectively, recover, and succeed on race day as well. So it's just kind of like a basic biological fact, that health is in fact the foundation of fitness.
So good. Man, that is so good. Okay, so you've written a lot about nutrition and fueling for athletes. Any tips? Kind of, you don't have to go through all your books right now, but and feel free to reference a book or two that you feel like would really be applicable for this audience. But any specific things, tips that you can provide the listeners? And again, the listeners are either current or future wellness coaches.
Yep.
If they are working with athletes, any little tidbits that you think might be good that would take them beyond the typical things they read about?
Yeah. What I'm always encouraging athletes to do in their nutrition, or in their, efforts to, turn diet and nutrition to their greater advantage as athletes, is to think in terms of tweak, don't overhaul. In the diet culture, the popular diet culture, that we are currently surrounded by.
Sure.
There's this tendency to, like, a diet has a name and you go on it. And it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what you've been doing in the past, like what you like, what you're used to, what seems to work for you versus maybe not everyone. And then it's just like, throw all that out and start over. I always, when an athlete, wants me to help him or her with an improved diet, I don't just tell them, here's the diet. I ask them a bunch of questions. I want to know everything about what they're doing now, because I want to change as little. Because people generally, by and large, they eat the way they do for a reason. Mm-hmm. They like it. It's convenient, whatever. So I want them to know where they are now, and look at just some basic, just doable things that they can adjust in order to get better results. And once you're getting the results you want, don't change anything more than you have to, because it will make the whole thing more sustainable.
Man, you're giving us some nice sound bites here. Tweak, don't overhaul. I mean, for our coaches, are you hearing this stuff? I mean, tweak, don't overhaul. That's wisdom, man. Okay, so now on to my selfish part of this interview. You've written probably two of my favorite 10 books of all time, and they're sitting right in front of me. How Bad Do You Want It? And Ironwar. Dude, I swear to you, every time I compete at Kona, Ironwar, even though it's a worn out hardback with the pages bent and tweaked and all that, it still finds its way into my limited suitcase space. And then How Bad Do You Want It? I mean, you talk about motivation from the get-go. Dude, so good. So good. So I'm looking for more of these. Keep this up. This is great stuff. But as you're working, these are the best athletes in the world, generationally, that you're talking about in both of these books. Are there, so some of the things that they do maybe don't apply to, Dave Scott racing the school bus to school at age whatever, on his bike probably isn't something we're going to encourage our kids to do right out of the gate. But are there certain lessons that you picked up from talking to these generationally amazing, incredible athletes that would apply to broader aspects of our own lives?
Yeah, for sure. It's tough. I wrestle with this because I naturally, I'm sort of a best practices oriented person. So I like to look at what the greats are doing and say, well, you do that too. But you have to keep in mind, it's not all duplicable. We can't, some people are just born with something special, and
Right.
that's fine. But I think there is stuff. It's helpful at least to understand what some of the consistent magic is. That all these world beaters tend to have. Just on the psychological side, sort of at a 50,000 foot level, the thing I see over and over and over with these athletes is a high level of self-trust. If you want to soundbite, the phrase I like to toss out is, it's just me against the world and I like my chances. Like that is the attitude these folks have. And it doesn't mean they don't have, moments of doubt or, moments where they lose confidence, but they're not always scrambling, looking, for answers outside of themselves, because ultimately, it's just a series of decisions and judgment calls that get you from point A to point B, whatever point B is for you. And it's funny, a lot of the top athletes, they're not necessarily the most physically gifted folks.
Right.
The most physically gifted ones are usually kicking butt as freshmen in high school.
Right.
But they're not necessarily the ones who are, world beaters 10, 12 years down the line. Often it's the people who have just a little less physical talent than that, but a little more something going for them, between the ears. And that self-trust piece I see over and over. And it's, it's not the easiest thing in the world to train, but it's one of those things that I'm sort of working on now. It's like, how much of that can we take out of the brain of a Dave Scott and impart into others? But, just to make it really concrete, like one of the tips I give athletes, when I'm trying to sort of develop a greater level of self-trust in them is to get them into the habit of giving themselves the same advice they would give to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Because often, we have that voice of reason inside us, but we have difficulty applying it to ourselves. So it's just, if you have, some kind of setback, some kind of challenge that you encounter, when you're looking for an answer, imagine it's a friend of yours, who's going through that challenge. And chances are you'll be able to come up with some good advice for that person, and then just turn around and apply it right to yourself. I think through little tricks like that, you can start to bootstrap your way toward that critical self-trust.
As you say that, I think that's another great tool for the coaches to use to encourage their clients. What advice would you give someone else? How do you apply that to you? But at the same moment I'm saying, wow, that's a really good idea, I struggle mightily in applying that basic concept in my own life. And I know better.
Right.
But so have you seen kind of that next layer of, okay, agree. Like we all think that's good advice. That's a route to go, but I am not good at doing that. So any kind of second level advice of when you're not used to doing this, I've found this to be a little tweak or trick or whatever to help that be more consistent, or to get started doing a little bit of that. Anything like that you can throw out to us, or maybe just to me.
Yeah, well, I guess, kind of a next step is just to think about, outcomes. What are the risks of making decision A versus decision B? What are the possible pluses of going in one route versus the other? And how do you weight the risk? What's a more likely outcome, the good or the bad, when you make decision A versus decision B? Sometimes, it all sounds very rational, and the problem is emotion gets mixed up in all this. But sometimes it's just, you can sort of, help your rational side, take the wheel in your mind by actually putting this stuff down on paper. It's like, I know the smart thing is to do X, but I'm really tempted to do Y, and just, sit down with a sheet of paper and a pen, if people still use these instruments anymore, and lay out pros and cons, and just, you'll have it looking and, staring you in the face. And it's just a funny thing. Last summer I spent in Flagstaff training with a team of professional runners, and I have never seen more athletes bail out of workouts than I did among these professional athletes who are trying to, go to the Olympics. And it's because of judgment. Like, it's not because they're not tough. They're the toughest people.
Right.
They're also, they have toughness in spades, but they just stay rational, like they'll get 24 miles into a 26 mile, depletion run, 4 weeks out from a marathon, and, like their hip starts acting up and they just stop. And, it is so tempting to run those last 2 miles. I'm so close.
Always.
And, my confidence is going to take a hit. But I saw it again and again, not just with one runner. There were a dozen on the team, and they all did it. And they just lived to fight another day. And, so yeah, I'm not just saying this because it sounds good. Like, it really is a key to success. It's just to learn to practice good judgment consistently. You don't have to prove your toughness over and over and over again. You got to be tough, yes, but also as smart as you are tough.
Oh man, so good, so good. There's another book for you. You can have that positive bailing out strategies or something like that.
Yes, yeah, just quit.
Yeah, quit now and win tomorrow. Something. So we've got some endurance coaches. You're writing that down, aren't you? So we've got endurance coaches that end up getting their wellness coach certification as kind of a way to broaden their audience, to expand that out. So I'd love to get, without you giving all your secrets away, but you do a lot of endurance coaching. So on the business side, any tips for those people that are listening that are saying, hey, I want to grow my endurance coaching and I happen to get this wellness coach certification, but man, I'd love to hear a tip from Matt. Again, you don't have to give us the big secrets, but anything that you think would be helpful in general about building their business, either as a broader coach, wellness coach, or specifically to endurance coaching, or some combination of the two?
Yeah. This is, I get versions of this question, fairly often. I find it a tough one to answer just because the path I've traveled is so unique. And yet I do think there's something that can be learned, from my example. And, in my case, as I mentioned, I started off as a writer. And then sort of became a coach and an expert and an authority or what have you. And what I've found, now that I'm kind of both of these things, is that, so much of succeeding in this sort of business is just standing apart from the noise. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of competition out there, and, simply being good at what you do is no guarantee of success. Like, just people have to know you exist. You have to have some kind of reputation. Like, I had that problem solved before I even was good at what I was doing, because my name was out there. And so, but that's pretty powerful. So people who are kind of coming at it from the other direction, I would just encourage you, like, don't underestimate the importance of putting time and effort, not just into practicing your coaching thing, but into building your name, getting it out there. I'm a writer by profession, but everyone learns how to write in school, and it's never been easier. You can find ways to contribute to websites, or have a blog, or use social media, to quote unquote create content and build your brand. And then because if you build it, they won't come. You have to build it and market it.
All right. Good stuff. So on that note, then, so if your own coaching practice, and obviously writing is your heart, that's where everything started, and you love doing that, and you always have, and your dad was a novelist. But where do you see your coaching practice developing, expanding over the next decade, or where would you like to see it expanding and developing over the next decade?
Yeah, that question is timely. So, I do a little bit of one-on-one coaching, but a lot of sort of coaching and mass, have, training plans that sort of sit online, and, people can, choose them a la carte. And I have a kind of a custom training plan service, it's a nice sweet spot between full one-on-one coaching and the sort of cookie cutter ready-made stuff. So I have this business called 80/20 Endurance. I have a partner in it, David Warden, triathlon coach. So we've got a little momentum behind this thing. There are a couple books that are getting that 80/20 shtick out into public view. And it's one of those things where, I told you I swing at every pitch. It was just another pitch I swung at, but it's really gained some traction. And I would like to, I'm not really a businessman, but I am in the process of sort of like getting the right help, the pieces in place to sort of turn this into a proper business, to actually include some offline elements like clinics, maybe coaching certification program, also to do more of what we're already doing. So it's kind of fun. I'm 47 years old now, and I like what I'm doing, but I also like to just take random left turns, and so this is one that I think could be kind of fun for the decade ahead. Is just to wear more of a business hat and see where we can take this thing. And what makes me feel good about it is that it's really started with a demand. It's not something I'm forcing down people's throat. It was just something I thought was valuable that I offered. And it kind of just people liked it and wanted more of it.
Well, congratulations. I'll look forward to following you with that. That sounds awesome. Okay. So now moving from your business to you, we always like to ask folks about, okay, we're talking wellness. Coaches are listening. On your personal life, are there certain areas outside of your direct training, you're getting ready for a race, but in terms of your broader health and well-being, are there certain areas, or maybe just pick one, that you're focused on now, and any insights about how you're going about that and how it's going, good or bad?
Yeah. One thing that I have learned to do more of is to not try to solve everything myself, fix everything myself. I mentioned that Flagstaff professional or fake professional runner experience I had. It was kind of humbling in a way, because I went into that feeling like I knew what I was doing. But then, I was coached by, a true elite level coach, and had the resources, the physical therapy and all the other stuff that, professional athletes have. And I feel like I felt like I aged 15 years in reverse. I ran the fastest marathon. I ran the fastest marathon of my life. It was like my 40th marathon. Wow. I beat like a 9-year-old personal best that I thought I wouldn't touch again. And I thought, wow, I really didn't know everything. So now going forward, I've kind of shifted back into triathlon mode, and I'm just exercising more humility and just getting help from people who are just, specialists. We're all so kind of siloed these days in our areas of expertise. And yeah, I know a thing or two, but I don't know everything. So for example, on Friday of this week, I'm going to spend an entire day at this kind of fancy athlete-oriented physical therapy outlet in Palo Alto, California, just getting all manner of testing done, having my swim stroke videotaped and getting a bike fitting. So I'm very injury prone, and I'm sort of kind of all dinged up right now. And I'm just going to show up at this place and say, I'm in your hands. I just want to be healthy. I'm not that great at doing it all by myself. And one thing I can trust myself to do is just do what they tell me. Because I've learned the value of, you got to choose your experts, you got to choose your resources carefully. But once, you have that, faith in the people you've chosen to help you out, just let them do it. And so, that's what I'm trying to do.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Really appreciate that. So last question, just any kind of wide open, any tips, comments, anything as you think about someone in or considering going into the health and wellness coaching arena. Any last little tidbits, tips, comments, ideas that you'd like to throw out there for them?
Yeah, one thing I thought of sharing in answer to that question is the value of walking the walk and being seen by your clients and potential clients. Doing that, that's really powerful. I think, I mentioned the importance of, building a reputation and a brand and marketing yourself. But just modeling the lifestyle that you're trying to get other people to follow. I am an athlete, and I like to share my journey. And I notice time and again that people really latch onto that when they see that I'm out there doing exactly, what they're trying to do. And I'm also, I try to be very transparent and, vulnerable as well. When I have a setback, I don't hide it. When I don't know an answer, I admit it. When I fail publicly, but, it can be a little scary to do that, but just, people value, they want to see realness, so, you because there's an aspirational element that they don't, your clients don't want to just know you're knowledgeable. They value, sort of authenticity, and it's easier to get people to do something if you're doing it yourself.
How do people follow? Like, I know how to follow you, but do you want to share with Twitter, Facebook, that kind of stuff? Best ways to keep up with latest books, latest things you're working on, the journeys, the realness. I mean, there were just so many nuggets in this little 30-minute chat that I think you're going to have a lot of folks that are like, hey, I like that guy. I want to follow what he's doing. So best way for the people to track you down, what would you suggest?
Yeah, my personal website is mattfitzgerald.org. There's also the 8020endurance.com business hub. I am on Facebook, and Twitter is @MattFitWriter.
Well, buddy, I really appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on with us, and we'll call it a day.
All right. Enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed this throwback episode. This was one of our most popular episodes of all time, and there's a good reason for that. Matt Fitzgerald has a new book out. It was not mentioned during the podcast because it wasn't ready back when we recorded this originally, but it's called Life is a Marathon. It's definitely worth picking up. As I mentioned earlier, he's also the writer of two of my all-time favorite books, titled Ironwar, and the second is How Bad Do You Want It? I rarely read books a second time, and I've read both of these multiple times. Definitely worth picking up. If you have any questions about your career, about this whole certification process, how it works, continuing education for coaches, the coaching retreat, any of those kinds of things, you know where to find us. results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Drop us a note. We can set up a time to chat. That's what we're here for. We talk to folks every single day about how this whole coaching thing works, what the industry looks like, how to prepare for the national exam, any of those kinds of things. So feel free to drop us a note. All kinds of details available on our new website. We're pretty excited about that at catalystcoachinginstitute.com, including details about the upcoming certification fast track programs. We now offer those both in Colorado and an upcoming one this fall in New Jersey. And we've got the coaching retreat in Estes Park, Colorado that is teed up. And boy, that's going to be exciting. So if you're listening to this prior to September and you're a coach, you might want to check that out. In any case, thanks for joining us. Thanks for spreading the word. You know where to find us. We are here for you anytime. And remember, we talk a lot about our best self in this whole thing called coaching. But folks, it's all about better than yesterday. Best self can be so intimidating, it can be scary, it can be overwhelming. But better? Hey, we can do that, right? And we can help others do the same. So thanks for joining us. I'll look forward to speaking with you soon on the next episode of the Catalyst Health and Wellness Coaching Podcast.